She didn't flinch when the gunfire stopped. It was the silence that unnerved her. Not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that waits. Dust floated in broken shafts of fading light through the blown-out wall. Her ears rang. Her breath was slow, shallow, counting itself just to keep going. Somewhere below, an engine coughed to life. Somewhere behind her, a man moaned. And somewhere she knew one of theirs lay still. She forced her legs to move, boots crunching over shattered brick. Her hands shook, though she wouldn't let them see. The team was watching her, even if they didn't look at her. They always watched her like she was an answer they weren't sure they wanted. Clear, a voice whispered on comms. Her own voice stayed quiet. Because she wasn't sure what to say. Because she could still see him, Private Cal, pinned in that corridor 2 minutes ago, blood spreading under his vest, eyes finding hers like he was asking her something. Asking why she hadn't been faster. She'd been fast enough to live. And that was what always made it worse. They regrouped on the roof as the sun bled into the horizon. Wind pulled at their gear, lifting the smell of cordite and burning insulation. None of them spoke. A drone hummed somewhere high above, tracing circles they couldn't see. The city stretched out in fractured silence below them, a carcass of concrete and steel. She kept scanning, kept breathing, kept pretending. One of the younger operators, Morneau, finally broke the silence. "Didn't think you'd go in there alone," he muttered. It wasn't admiration, it was disbelief. She didn't answer, didn't tell him she hadn't gone in alone. She'd gone in with the ghosts of everyone she hadn't saved. Hours later, inside the forward outpost, she sat on the floor with her back to the wall, peeling off her gloves. Her hands were raw. Her rifle leaned against the cot. The others spoke in hushed tones on the far side of the tent. Their laughter was brittle, like glass under tension. She closed her eyes. And behind her eyelids, she was back home, in the little kitchen with pale blue walls, hearing her father's voice through the radio static. He'd been military, too. The kind who believed in duty more than safety. The kind who left pieces of himself behind in places no one spoke about. He used to say scars were proof of life. But she'd learned something else. Scars were also proof of loss. She carried both. A storm rolled in that night. Rain lashed the tents, tinny against the corrugated roofs. Lightning flashed on the ridge, throwing shadows across the dirt compound. The air smelled of ozone and diesel. She stood at the edge of the perimeter, poncho flapping, watching the road beyond the wire. There was something out there. Not an enemy, not yet. Something quieter, more patient. Command had briefed them earlier. A convoy had vanished 2 days ago. No signals, no wreckage, just gone. Now there were whispers about civilians, about someone still alive, about a hard drive they weren't supposed to know existed. No one had said her name. But they'd all looked at her. She hated how used to that she'd become. By dawn, she was moving again. Their convoy crawled through the shattered outskirts, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The sky was a dull bruise. The world smelled like rust and rain and old smoke. She sat behind the driver, eyes scanning every doorway, every rooftop, every flicker of movement that might mean too much. No one spoke. Even Morneau had gone quiet. They stopped where the road ended in silence and bones. Burned-out trucks, abandoned shoes, a child's drawing stuck to a wall by the wind, a sun with too many rays. She stepped out first. The air was heavy, the kind that listens. She found bootprints, fresh, leading into the maze of collapsed buildings. She followed. Her heartbeat slowed the way it always did before it got loud. They found them hours later. Or what was left. 4 bodies, 3 tags, and a signal device crushed into the mud, its casing pried open like a ribcage. No sign of the drive. No sign of the intel they'd risked everything for. She stood over the bodies as the others searched. Rain dripped from her helmet. Her fingers clenched and unclenched. One of them, a woman with half her face burned, still had her hands bound. Morno turned to her. "What now?" She didn't answer, because she saw something. A trail, small, deliberate. Shell casings stacked neatly by a wall, like someone had left her a message. She sent the team back, stayed behind. She didn't ask permission, didn't offer explanation. She just couldn't walk away. Because if anyone was still alive, it meant she hadn't failed yet. And she couldn't bear another name added to the list inside her. She slipped into the ruins alone. No footsteps, no breath, no heartbeat but her own. Her scar along her jaw itched in the cold. She ran her fingers over it without thinking. She hated that scar. Because it wasn't just skin. It was the moment her best friend had died beside her. And every time she felt it, she remembered she hadn't. The light dimmed to gray, the city exhaled. She moved like shadow through crumbling stairwells and hollowed corridors, listening to the hum of her own blood. She found spent rounds laid in a pattern under a stairwell. 3, then 2, then 1. A countdown. Someone was leading her. That night, under the broken roof of what used to be a school, she found the first real sign. A note jammed into a crack in the wall. Just 3 words. "Still have it." Her breath caught. Someone had survived. Someone had the drive. Someone was running and leaving her a trail. She closed her eyes against the sting in them. Because this wasn't just about intel anymore. This was about them. The ones who didn't make it. The ones who trusted her too. She crumpled the note in her hand. And kept walking. She wasn't sure how long she'd been walking. The city didn't have hours anymore, just light and absence of it. Her boots whispered through dust as she crossed the skeleton of an overpass, its spine cracked in the middle. Wind moaned through rebar ribs. Below, an entire block had collapsed into itself, like the earth had opened its jaw and swallowed everything halfway. She checked her compass, the needle jittered. Checked her heartbeat, too steady. That always worried her. Because she knew what came next, the moment her body tricked itself into calm before chaos struck. She stopped in what used to be a playground. A swing still hung from one chain. It squealed when the wind nudged it. There were shell casings in the sand. A bootprint half faded near the slide. Fresh. Her chest tightened. She crouched, fingers brushing the print like it might tell her who they were, the one she was chasing, or maybe the one she was already too late to save. She told herself it didn't matter. That this was about the drive, the intel, the mission. But she knew better. This was about something heavier. She just couldn't say it out loud. Because if she did, it might break her. By nightfall, she'd crossed the edge of the old industrial sector. Rusting cranes loomed like broken giants. Windows gaped like eye sockets. Her headset crackled once, then silence. She'd cut her link hours ago. Didn't want Command's voice in her ear. Didn't want Morno's worry, or the questions about why she was alone again. They wouldn't understand. They hadn't been there the day her best friend bled out beside her in the desert, hands still gripping hers. They hadn't heard the sound she made, a sound she never made again. No one else had watched the light leave someone they loved and kept breathing like nothing had changed. Except everything had. She took shelter in the shell of an old train depot. The air smelled of wet iron and memory. She sat with her back to a pillar, rifle across her knees, eyes half closed but not sleeping. Not really. Her dreams weren't safe. In them she always heard the names. Cal Tours Miles. And before them Claire. Claire with her sunburnt cheeks and crooked grin, sitting beside her on the carrier deck, sketching stupid cartoons on their ammo crates. Claire, who had stood up when everyone else ducked and never stood up again. Her hand drifted to the scar along her jaw. She pressed hard, like she could blur the memory back into her skin. Dawn crawled across the depot floor, inching toward her boots. She rose with it. There was a smear of mud on the far doorframe, thin, precise, a fingertip. Someone had passed through. Her chest flickered with something she didn't want to name. Hope had teeth, and she'd been bitten by it before. But she followed anyway. The trail led into the flood tunnels under the city. Water whispered against the concrete. Her boots sank into silt. The walls sweated. The sound of her own breath came back at her in layers. Then, something else. A scrape metal on stone ahead. She froze. Listened. Nothing. Her finger rested on the trigger guard, not pressing, just knowing. She moved forward in silence, so sharp it felt like a blade. She found a fire, or what was left of it still smoldering. A circle of black ash, ringed with stones, tucked in a recess where the tunnel widened. Beside it, a canteen. Empty. Warm. Her pulse stuttered. Whoever they were close. She should have called it in. Protocol said reinforcements. Protocol said containment. But she couldn't. Because it felt personal. And she didn't know why. Not yet. A sound rippled through the dark. A voice. Small. Shaking. Please. She spun, rifle rising, breath locked in her throat. Light caught on something, a glimmer of eyes deep in the tunnel bend. She edged closer. A boy. Maybe 10, thin as the barrel of her weapon, wrapped in an oversized jacket, clutching a radio like a lifeline. He flinched when her shadow fell on him. "Who's with you?" she whispered. His lips moved, but no words came. Then his gaze darted to a corner behind him. She followed it. A message scratched into the concrete. North 3. Her heartbeat hit hard. A direction, a distance. She crouched low, letting her rifle dip. Where are they? The boy shook his head fast, then shoved the radio toward her and bolted into the dark. Gone. Just gone. His footsteps faded like he'd been made of air. She stared after him, then turned the radio over. Inside, wedged behind the battery, a memory card. Her breath stopped. She slid it into her reader, hands trembling, and saw a single frame. Grainy, dark, but she knew the face. A man she hadn't seen in years. A ghost with eyes like gunmetal. Captain Rourke. And taped to the screen was another note. Still have it. Her throat closed. Rourke. He was supposed to be dead. They buried an empty casket. And if he had the drive. Her hands shook harder. Because Rourke wasn't just a name. He was the one who'd chosen Claire's team for that mission. The one who'd pulled her from the blast zone after. The one who'd vanished into the desert with blood on his hands and silence in his mouth. She hadn't said his name in years. She couldn't. Because saying it meant remembering the look in his eyes when he told her she'd live, and Claire wouldn't. Wind howled through the tunnel mouth. She rose slowly. North 3. 3 kilometers, maybe miles, maybe 3 chances to finally understand. She set her jaw. And moved. The surface was burning daylight now. She slipped between fractured buildings, shadows crawling behind her. Every window felt like an eye. Every breeze carried whispers of footsteps that never appeared. Her mind replayed Rourke's face, blurred and broken by static. Why leave her a trail? Why now? Why her? Hours blurred. Her canteen ran dry. Her feet ached like old grief. But she kept going. She crossed a dead highway where wild grass clawed through the cracks, past a half-toppled billboard still showing half a smile, stepped over a helmet half buried in dust. No birds, no dogs. Just wind, and the faintest trace of human will. By dusk she found the second sign. A flare casing, empty, balanced upright on a shattered window ledge, impossible unless someone placed it gently. She climbed to it, pulse pounding. Beneath it was another note, taped flat. Not safe, hurry. Her stomach turned to stone. She scanned the horizon, nothing. No movement. No shape. Then the air changed. Too still, too tight. Her skin prickled. The first shot punched the wall inches from her head. She dove, glass exploding around her, rolled behind a beam as a second round screamed through where her spine had been. Sniper distant, patient. Her breath came sharp, controlled. She slid her scope around the edge. Nothing. Just heat haze and broken sky. Another shot tore the ledge near her boot. She moved without thinking down the stairwell, boots skidding on dust, lungs hammering, vision tunneling to the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She burst through the bottom door, dropped to one knee, swung her scope back toward the ridge. There. A glint. Then gone. She blinked and saw it. A figure pulling back, faded camo, limp in the left leg, moving like pain was familiar. Her gut twisted, because she knew that gait. Rourke, alive, armed, and aiming at her. But he hadn't taken the kill shot. He'd warned her, then spared her. Why? Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Not from fear. From something sharper. Memories cut cleaner than bullets. The last light bled from the horizon. She stayed in the shadows, forcing her breath calm. If he was alive, if he still had the drive, then he wanted her to follow. And she would. Even if it meant letting old scars bleed again. Even if it meant finding out why he'd left her alive, when he hadn't left anyone else. She rose as darkness took the ruins, eyes fixed north. And kept walking. The night swallowed her whole. No stars, no moon, just the sound of her boots whispering through rubble and the faint static of her own breath in her ears. She hadn't seen Rourke again. But she could feel him. Somewhere ahead, just beyond reach, like a thought she couldn't finish. He was leaving her a trail on purpose. She knew it now. Which meant he wanted her to follow. Which meant this wasn't an ambush. Not yet. Still, her hand stayed close to the trigger. Because Rourke had always played two games at once. And she'd never been sure which one she was in. Hours blurred together. Cold bit at her fingertips. Her shoulders ached beneath the weight of her pack. She passed through the ruins of an old shopping district, storefronts gutted, mannequins slumped in broken glass like forgotten civilians. Her reflection caught in a shard of mirror. Eyes hollow, jaw tight. A ghost wearing her own skin. She wondered if Rourke would even recognize her now. Or if he'd see her the way she sometimes saw herself, as something left behind, still moving out of habit. By dawn, she reached the outskirts of the hills. The air smelled different here, pine, wet earth, a ghost of smoke. Bird song. The first she'd heard in weeks. It stopped when she stepped closer. She crouched, scanning the tree line. There, a strip of torn fabric caught on a low branch. She ran her thumb across it, faded desert camo. Old, familiar. Her chest tightened. She remembered the last time she'd seen Rourke. Dust storm rolling over the horizon like the sky was falling. Claire bleeding out in her lap. Rourke's hand gripping her shoulder, shaking her, telling her she had to go now. He stayed behind. Said he'd buy her time. Said he'd catch up. He never did. They said he died. She had believed them. Or maybe she'd needed to. Because the alternative, that he just walked away, was worse. The trail climbed into the hills, slick with dew. Her breath plumed white, her knees burned with each step. She stopped at a ridgeline, scanning through her scope. A cabin nestled in the trees below. Half-collapsed roof, chimney cold. But the path around it too clean. Used. Her heartbeat quickened. She waited until the wind rose. Then moved. Low, silent. The cabin door sagged on one hinge. She pushed it gently with her barrel. Wood creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust motes danced in the gray light. No sound, no shape. Then she saw it. A single mug on the table. Warm. She spun as a floorboard whispered behind her. Rifle up. Sight on center mass. And froze. Rourke stood in the doorway. Older, thinner, left leg wrapped in a brace, beard streaked with ash. His eyes were the same. Steel. Tired. And unbearably alive. Neither spoke at first. Wind sighed through the cracks. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. His mouth curved, not a smile, something sadder. "Maybe I am," he said. She didn't lower her weapon. "Where's the drive?" He studied her, like he was reading the parts of her she tried not to show. "Safe," he said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're ready for." Her finger twitched against the trigger. "People died for it." "I know. Claire died for it." His eyes flickered. A crack in the armor. "She died because I sent her," he said quietly. The words landed like stones. She felt her throat close. "You ran. I buried her." He stepped closer, slowly. "She was gone before the blast hit. I pulled what was left. No one needed to see that, not you." She shook her head hard, as if it would shake the images away. "She thought you left her. She thought wrong." Silence pressed between them, thick as the dust on the floor. He lowered himself into a chair, grimacing as his leg locked. "I didn't disappear," he said. "I was cut loose, burned off the books. They didn't want the drive found." "Then why keep it?" His gaze lifted to hers. "Because it's proof," he said. "Proof they knew what they were sending you into. Proof it wasn't a mission, it was a disposal." The floor tilted beneath her. "What?" "They needed the site gone. No survivors, no questions. They sent you because you were expendable." Her chest hollowed out. She saw Claire's smile, Cal's terrified eyes, Miles' last laugh. Disposable. The word burned. Her hands trembled. "Then why leave me alive?" she whispered. "Because you weren't supposed to be," Rourke said. His voice was soft, almost breaking. "You made it back when none of you were meant to. And if they knew what you carried, they'd have buried you too." Her mind spun. Carried what? She'd come back with scars and silence, nothing more. Unless... Her hand drifted to her vest, the small stitched patch Claire had sewn there. Her breath hitched. "Claire knew," she said. Rourke nodded. "She copied the drive to her beacon, hid it. I took it when I found her. They think it burned with her body." The room tilted again. Claire had known, and Claire had chosen her. The weight of it almost dropped her to her knees. She forced air into her lungs. "So where is it now?" "Hidden," Rourke said. "Buried under 3 tons of concrete, locked to one biometric signature." "Whose?" He hesitated. "Then yours." The word hit like recoil. Her stomach turned. "Why me?" "Because Claire trusted you," he said, "and because I didn't." His eyes softened. "Until now." The silence stretched. Long, unbearable. "You left us," she said. "I saved you. You broke us." "I know." His voice cracked. "And I've been trying to make it mean something ever since." Something shifted in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. but something close to understanding. She lowered her rifle. Just an inch. Then let's finish it, she said. Rourke's mouth twitched. Finish it how? Expose them. They'll kill you. They already tried. He studied her for a long time. Then he nodded. Slow, heavy. There's a cache 2 clicks east, he said. Old comms gear. If we can boost a signal, we send it blind burst to every net on the continent. No taking it back. Good. He gave a short, bitter laugh. You've changed. She touched the scar on her jaw. So have you. They left the cabin at first light. The world felt sharp again, real. Birdsong returned as they moved. She walked a few steps behind Rourke, watching the way his shoulders still squared despite the limp. The man who had haunted her for years was now just a man, broken, flawed, stubbornly breathing. Like her. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. But as they crested the ridge, she caught something in the distance. A flicker. Glass on sunlight. Her stomach dropped. Scope flash. She dove, slamming Rourke down as the first shot cracked the air. Dirt erupted beside them. Sniper. Close. Too close. Rourke cursed, dragging his sidearm free. How? They followed you, she said. No, he rasped, they followed you. Another shot screamed past. She rolled, brought her rifle up, scanning. There. A shadow on the far ridge, repositioning. Her breath steadied to a razor's edge. She fired once. The figure crumpled. Silence. Then birdsong, tentative, returned. Rourke lay on his back, chest heaving. You always were faster, he muttered. She stared at the smoke curling from her barrel. Faster. Not better. Not lucky. Just still breathing when others weren't. Her hands trembled as the silence closed around them. Then she looked at him. Let's move. They disappeared into the trees, 2 ghosts carrying the weight of everyone who didn't make it, heading toward a signal strong enough to bring the truth home. If they lived long enough to send it. Why did the room feel smaller when she entered? It wasn't the size of the command post. It was cavernous, its concrete walls sweating with cold, but the silence that folded in on itself when she walked through the door. Eyes flicked up from maps and monitors. No one said her name. No one had to. She didn't slow her steps. A coffee mug trembled slightly as a junior intel officer set it down. The hum of generators outside filled the gap no one bridged. Her boots echoed, dull and steady, as she crossed to the table strewn with reconnaissance photos. She stood there still until the air felt like glass. Then she spoke. We don't have time to wait for ideal. A few faces hardened, others softened. Colonel Maddox didn't look up from the satellite feed, and if you're wrong, then I'll carry it. No bravado, just wait. He finally raised his eyes, studied her like she was a ruin that had somehow stayed standing, and maybe she was. Because 2 nights ago she'd woken in the barracks gasping from a dream, not of battle but of water, of sinking, of her brother's hand slipping away into blackness as a gunship roared overhead. She hadn't saved him, she never could, but tonight she might save others, if they let her try. They moved like whispers through the underground corridors. She walked point, the map folded into muscle memory. Concrete swallowed sound. Each step carried the scent of diesel, rust, and the faint metallic tang of blood, old blood, embedded in the stone from someone else's war. Behind her, Reyes muttered a quiet prayer in Spanish, words meant for no one's ears. Ahead, the stairwell loomed like a black throat. Halfway down, Harris tapped her shoulder. You're shaking. She almost laughed. Then don't look too close. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the body remembering what the mind wouldn't allow. She clenched her jaw and pushed the tremor down into her boots. At the bottom, the corridor yawned open into the listening station. Dead screens stared back at them. Dust floated like ash in the beam of Harris's light. "This place was sealed after the blast," Reyes whispered. "Then the signal we tracked," Harris began. "Shouldn't exist," she finished for him. Her heartbeat ticked like a metronome inside her skull. And then the sound came again. A faint, pulsing click from the far corner of the room. She moved toward it. Not fast, not slow, like approaching an animal caught in barbed wire, cautious, merciful. The clicks grew louder, more insistent, until she saw it. A small transmitter buried in the wall, still blinking, still alive. And painted beside it in a shaky, almost childish hand, 3 words in faded red. "Still inside here." They regrouped in the outer corridor, backs against the wall. Harris stared at the message, lips pale. "Could be bait," he said. "Could be someone left behind," Reyes countered softly. They both looked at her. She didn't answer at first, because her hands were trembling again, and this time she let them. Because part of her had always been left behind, in every mission, in every silence. She drew a slow breath. "Either way," she said, "we find out." The crawl space was too narrow for all of them. She went alone. The air tasted stale, layered with old smoke. Pipes pressed cold against her shoulders as she shimmied forward, her flashlight beam cutting through dust motes like falling snow. The walls squeezed tighter. Her breath echoed loud against her own skull. Halfway in, she stopped. Listened. A sound. Not clicks, not machinery. Breathing. So faint she thought it might be her own. She crawled faster. The space widened suddenly, like a lung exhaling. Her light caught the outline of a figure slumped against the wall. A girl. Maybe 16, maybe less. Eyes half open but unfocused, lips cracked, skin gray with dehydration. One arm wrapped protectively around a small black case. "Hey," she whispered, voice cracking. The girl flinched. "It's okay," she said. "I've got you." But the girl only clutched the case tighter, shaking her head. And that was when she saw the insignia burned into its surface. It wasn't local. It wasn't even from their side. Her stomach knotted. Whatever was inside, someone had died trying to protect it. She placed her hand gently on the girl. "We can't stay here." The girl blinked slowly. Then, like a bird folding its wings, she let go. The others went still when she emerged from the crawlspace, carrying both the girl and the black case. Reyes whispered, "What is it?" She shook her head. "We don't open it here." "Command will want answers," Harris warned. "They can wait." Her voice had a steel edge, even she hadn't heard in a while. Because the moment the girl's weight settled against her shoulder, she remembered something her brother once said before his last patrol. "If you can't save them all, save the one in front of you." The corridor trembled faintly above them, far-off echoes of movement. Time was collapsing. She glanced down at the girl's sleeping face, the cracked lips forming silent words. Then she looked at the black case. And she realized this mission wasn't about extraction anymore. It was about something much heavier. And she was already carrying it. What if the girl didn't survive the night? That thought wrapped around her like wire as they trudged through the flooded service tunnels, boots sloshing in black water. The girl's head lolled against her shoulder, fever burning through her thin frame. Every few steps, she'd twitch and mumble, words too broken to understand, words that sounded more like static than speech. Reyes walked just behind her, scanning the dark with restless eyes. "She's burning up," he muttered. "I know," she said. "Dehydration, infection, maybe worse." "I know." Reyes didn't push it, just exhaled slowly, the sound of tremor in the stale air. Harris took point. His silhouette looked carved from iron in the dim glow of his headlamp, but she caught the stiffness in his gait, the quiet limping he thought no one saw. Everyone was carrying something tonight. Some burdens just bled louder than others. They stopped at a junction, the tunnels branching off like black veins. "Map says left leads to the comms shaft," Harris said, "but the signal booster, that way." He gestured right. She adjusted the weight of the girl on her back. Her muscles ached like cold metal. "We can't risk a call until we know who's listening," she said. Reyes frowned. "Then where?" "Up, always up." The maintenance ladder rose into darkness like a scar through the concrete. Its rungs were slick with condensation, freezing her palms. Each climb pulled fire through her shoulders, the girl's weight dragging her down like gravity had chosen sides. Halfway up, Harris whispered, "Why her? Why risk all this?" She paused, breath ragged, because she was left. "That's not enough. It has to be." Her voice cracked on the last word. She hoped they didn't hear it. Because what she couldn't say was this: saving the girl wasn't strategy. It was survival, not hers, her soul. The last thin thread tying her to who she once was before the war scraped her hollow. And if that thread broke, there'd be nothing left to climb for. They surfaced in the ruins of the old hangar at dawn. Pale light spilled through shattered windows, dusk glowing like ember ash. The air was sharp with cold, and the faint scent of scorched jet fuel. She laid the girl down on a tarp. Her pulse was weak, her lips the color of paper. Reyes crouched beside them, gently pressing fingers to her throat. "She's fatting." "Not yet," she said. Reyes looked at her, not at her words but at her eyes. Then he dug through his pack and handed her a syringe of rehydration serum. "If this goes wrong, it could stop her heart. Then I'll bring her back." She said it like a promise, like defiance, like prayer. The needle slid into the girl's arm, a small, sharp gasp. Her eyelids fluttered, then stillness. Seconds stretched. A full minute. Then a shiver, a breath. Reyes exhaled hard and sat back. Harris muttered something that might have been thanks or disbelief. She just touched the girl's forehead with the back of her hand. It was still hot, but no longer burning through her. They had bought time. While Reyes watched the girl, she carried the black case to the far end of the hangar and set it down. She knelt before it, her knees pressing into cold grit, and stared. The insignia etched into its metal surface was still there, a circle fractured by a single vertical line. She'd seen it once before, burned into the wall of a safe house reduced to ash. The unit that had guarded it had all died, their files wiped, their names erased. Ghosts in a war that never officially existed. Her fingers hovered over the latch. What if opening it unraveled everything? What if not opening it did worse? She swallowed, her throat dry as stone, and flipped the latch. The lid rose on silent hinges. Inside lay a small black sphere, smooth and seamless, resting in a cradle of foam. No markings, no ports, just an eerie hum you didn't hear as much as feel, in your teeth, in your bones. She felt her heartbeat stutter. Whatever this was, it wasn't built to be found. She snapped the lid shut. Then she whispered to no one, what the hell were they trying to hide? That night, while the others slept, she stayed awake beside the girl. Moonlight cut sharp lines across the cracked floor. The hangar creaked like a dying animal. She held her rifle across her lap, not for defense but as an anchor, something solid in the spinning silence. The girl stirred, murmuring again in that static voice. This time she caught a word. "Brother." Her chest clenched like a fist. Because her own brother's voice still haunted her in half-sleep, laughing, taunting, soft, then gone. And for a flicker of a moment she hated herself. Hated that she was still breathing when he was. Hated how survival felt like betrayal. She leaned close, whispering so only the darkness heard. "You're not alone anymore." She didn't know if the girl could hear her. Maybe the words were for herself. Before dawn, Harris woke her with a hand on her shoulder. "Scouts," he said, "North Ridge moving fast." She stood, bones aching. Ray's was already packing. The girl still slept, but her breathing was steadier now, as if the world had decided not to take her yet. "Extraction?" Harris asked. She looked toward the black case, toward the rising pale light bleeding through the windows. "No," she said. "Then what?" "We go dark, no signals, no trails, we disappear." Harris frowned. "And if command calls?" "They won't." Because she wouldn't let them. Because this mission was no longer theirs. It was hers. And she would burn every map to make sure no one could follow. Why did the earth feel like it was holding its breath? They had crossed into the forest before dawn, slipping through tangled roots and fractured moonlight. Now the canopy loomed high and still above them, branches knitted so tightly even the wind seemed afraid to move. Their boots sank silently into loam. No birds called. No insects sang. Only the faint click of Harris's safety as he walked point and the soft rasp of the girl's breath on her back. Every step felt borrowed. Ray's kept glancing over his shoulder. "Feels wrong," he murmured. "It is," she said. Because she remembered this silence, from another place, another mission, right before the world tore open and swallowed everyone but her. They stopped at the stream to refill canteens. The water was glass still, catching their reflections in fractured shards. She set the girl down gently against a mossed log. The fever had broken, but she was pale, lips trembling as if caught in dreams she couldn't escape from. Ray's crouched to check her pulse. "Stronger," he said, almost surprised. "She wants to live," she whispered. Ray's looked up at her like he wasn't sure whether to believe that or her. While they waited, she moved to the edge of the clearing and knelt, scanning the tree line. Her eyes caught the faint glimmer of something metallic high on a trunk, a sliver of sunlight hitting glass. A lens. Her chest went cold. They weren't alone. She rose in silence, motioned to Harris. He followed her gaze, jaw tightening. "Drones," he mouthed. "Too old, analog." She pointed to the black case slung across her pack. "They know what we're carrying." Harris didn't argue, just shouldered his rifle and said, "Then we keep moving." They moved deeper, following deer trails that twisted like veins. The forest dimmed around them, light bleeding away as the canopy closed. Their breaths plumed in the cold. Ray's hummed under his breath, soft, tuneless. She almost told him to stop, then realized it wasn't for him. It was for the girl, who stirred slightly each time the sound wavered. Her own brother used to hum like that, back when they were kids sneaking into abandoned barns, when war was still just something that happened in other people's stories, before water turned red and radios turned silent. She bit down hard on the memory, tasting rust. By midday, they reached the bunker. It rose from the forest floor like a buried tooth, concrete cracked and clawed with moss. The steel door hung crooked on rusted hinges, as if something had tried to claw its way out. "This place isn't on any map," Harris muttered. "Exactly," she said. They slipped inside. The air hit them like a fist, cold, dry, and faintly chemical. Old emergency lights buzzed dimly, their glow stuttering across gutted consoles and scattered shell casings. Dust lay thick as ash. Ray's set the girl down near a wall and wrapped her in his jacket. She curled in on herself, eyes half open, following their movements without speaking. Her fingers still clutched at nothing, as if the black case were still in her arms. She swallowed hard, because the girl wasn't afraid, not of them, not of this place. That meant she'd seen worse. They found the lab in the far chamber. Or what was left of it. Broken vials glittered on the floor like fallen stars. Glass cabinets stood hollow. In the center of the room, a single pedestal remained intact, and on its surface, etched deep into the concrete, was the same symbol burned into the case. A circle split by a vertical line. She set the case down. Her pulse was drumming in her ears. Ray's voice was barely more than breath. "We should call this in." "They'll bury it," she said. "Maybe it should be buried." "No." The word came out sharp, harsher than she meant. Because if this was the same program her brother had stumbled into, if this was why he died, then letting it vanish again would mean his death meant nothing. She couldn't allow that. She opened the case. The black sphere lay silent inside, smooth and perfect. No seams, no lights now, just a cold presence like gravity condensed. Harris crouched beside her. "What is it?" "I don't know." But her voice said, "I have to." They set up a small camp inside the bunker, just enough to rest for a few hours. Harris took first watch. Ray sat near the girl, quietly mending a torn strap on his pack with careful, patient hands. She sat in the shadows near the pedestal, staring at the sphere, thinking about the last time she saw her brother, how he'd been smiling, tired, shoulders soaked from the rain, how he'd told her, "When you come back, I'll be here." And how when she came back, there was only smoke. She blinked hard, jaw locked. She buried him with her own hands. She knew the shape of grief. But this cold coil inside her was something else. It was hunger. For the truth. For meaning. For something to stitch her soul back together before it slipped apart completely. In the dead hours before dawn, the girl woke screaming. A raw animal sound. They were on their feet in seconds. Ray's caught her shoulders as she thrashed. Harris aimed at the doorway instinctively, eyes wide. She dropped to her knees beside the girl. Hey, look at me." The girl's eyes snapped open, wild and glassy. And for the first time she spoke. One word. "Run." Then she went limp. Ray's looked at her, voice tight. "She's delirious. Or warning us." The forest outside was silent again, too silent. Like the world holding its breath. Waiting. And somewhere deep inside her, she felt the coil of dread unspool. Because she knew that silence. It meant they were already surrounded. What if they weren't coming to kill them, but to take the sphere? That thought struck like a blade through her chest as she stood in the bunker's doorway, the cold air outside hanging still as a held breath. No movement yet, no shadows between the trees, but silence could hide 1,000 things. Silence had teeth. Behind her, the others were breaking camp. Harris coiled the comms wire with clipped efficiency. Ray's checked the girl's pulse with hands too steady to be honest. The black case sat closed beside the pedestal, the faint hum gone, but its presence pressing against the room like a storm cloud. She stared into the tree line. The first crow cawed somewhere distant, then stopped abruptly. Her fingers slid to her rifle grip. "Time gone," she said quietly. "We move." They cut through the forest at a punishing pace, following no trail but her instinct. The girl was awake now, barely, clinging to Ray's back, her eyes dull but alert enough to scan the trees. Occasionally her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. The forest began to change around them. First the moss grew thick as carpet. Then the trees thinned, replaced by black rock and low, spiny brush. The air grew heavier, denser. Each breath dragged cold metal into their lungs. They came upon the fence just past noon, a ragged chain-link perimeter half collapsed, half swallowed by creeping roots. Beyond it lay an expanse of rusted radio towers jutting from cracked concrete, their cables swaying soundlessly like dead vines. "This place isn't abandoned," Harris muttered. "Not anymore," she said. And that's when she saw them. Far off among the skeletal towers, 3 figures in dark tactical gear, moving slow, measured, sweeping the perimeter with practiced arcs of rifles. Not hunters, not patrol. Collectors. They ducked low behind the roots, bodies pressed to the cold earth. Harris whispered, "They're blocking the east and north exits. West Ridge is open for now. They'll close it, she said. Then what's the play? She looked at the girl. The girl was staring straight back at her. No fear, just something hollow and knowing, like she'd already seen the end of this story. They're here for the sphere, she said softly, not for us. Ray's blinked. How do you know? Because we're still breathing. No one argued. They waited until the figures turned their sweep away, then slipped from cover, moving fast and low toward the West Ridge. Every movement felt too loud, every breath a flare in the silence. Halfway across the cracked concrete, a soft buzz trembled through the ground. She froze. Drones. Tiny, fast, invisible until they were. Down, she hissed. They dove into the shadow of a fallen tower as 3 black drones zipped overhead, their rotors whispering like hornets. Lights shimmered from their undercarriages, scanners tracing for heat signatures. She pressed her body flat against the concrete, heart beating loud enough she was sure they could hear it. The girl's breath came quick and shallow against Ray's back. The drones lingered, scanning, waiting. Then, mercifully, they drifted on. She didn't move for a full minute after they vanished. Then she rose slow, every joint aching from tension. We can't outpace them, she said. Then how? Harris began. We vanish. They reached the ridge by dusk. The world below stretched out like torn cloth, ravines, dead rivers, fractured hills. Night was coming fast, shadows rising like water. They found an old observation outpost buried into the rock, its door warped but intact. Inside smelled of oil and mildew, safe enough for now. They sealed the entrance and doused every light. Only then did she set the black case down. It seemed heavier now, or maybe she was just weaker. The girl sat curled on the floor, knees tucked to her chest, eyes fixed on the case. In the dim gloom, her face seemed older, etched with something that didn't belong to someone her age. Rays whispered, "We can't keep running forever." "We won't," she said. "Then what?" She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Because for the first time since this started, she was afraid not of dying, but of surviving and still failing. Later, as Harris dozed in the corner and Rays tended to a split seam in his boot, she sat with the girl by the cold stone wall. The girl's voice was a dry whisper, "They'll never stop." She blinked, "You can talk." The girl nodded slow, "I didn't want to until now." "Why now?" The girl's eyes slid to the case. "Because it isn't just theirs, it remembers." The words landed like static in her mind. Remembers what? The girl didn't answer, just curled tighter, as if sheltering from something only she could see. And in that moment, the soldier felt the quiet terror of knowing she was carrying something not just dangerous, but alive. Much later, when the others slept, she climbed to the outpost roof and sat under the stars. The wind clawed her face, sharp and thin. Below, the forest stretched black and endless. Somewhere out there, those figures were still moving, still searching. She thought about her brother, his voice in the rain, his body beneath her hands as the life drained away. How he'd whispered something she couldn't hear. How she'd carried that silence like a wound ever since. And how maybe he'd found the same truth. Maybe he'd died trying to stop it. Her eyes burned in the cold. She wiped them dry hard. Because if that was true, if this sphere was why her brother's name was erased, then she couldn't just survive this mission. She had to finish it, even if it meant erasing herself too. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire had ever been? Alina stood at the edge of the runway, boots sinking slightly into damp earth as the transport's engines faded into the clouds. The rest of the unit was gone now, sent home, reassigned, scattered like ashes into the wind. She had stayed behind, not by orders, not by duty, but because something inside her hadn't unclenched yet. Rain began its slow descent, tapping against her shoulders, cooling the bandaged scar along her jaw that still throbbed like it wanted to remember. She tilted her head back, let it sting her eyes, because if she blinked, she feared the faces would blur. She promised herself, promised them, she wouldn't let that happen. She found herself walking the perimeter of the silent base as if her feet needed to trace every corner one last time. Barracks still smelled faintly of metal polish and sweat. The mess hall, long emptied, held the echo of laughter that once felt immortal. She brushed her fingers over a carved name on the table edge. Sawyer. He'd hated mess duty, loved card games, had cried when his sister sent him a photo of her newborn. They were all stitched into her. She carried them, each breath like a memorial flame. But carrying didn't mean healing. And she knew now she might never heal. Maybe the point wasn't to. Weeks passed in muted fragments. The base officially shut down, paperwork signed, locks clicked. She stayed, unofficially, quietly haunting the place like it was the only world left where they still existed. Every dawn she ran the old obstacle course. Every dusk she sat by the hangar doors, boots dangling above cracked concrete, eyes on the horizon until stars rose like silent witnesses. One night she opened the small box she'd kept locked for months. Inside, dog tags, a bullet flattened from striking a wall near her head, a folded photo of 6 of them on the tarmac, squinting in the sun. She stared at it for a long time. No tears, just an aching quiet. Then she slipped the tags over her neck, all of them, until they rattled like wind chimes against her chest, until the weight nearly bowed her shoulders, until it felt right. There was a letter, too, still sealed, from Raffi. Her fingers hovered over it, trembled. She couldn't, not yet. The next morning she walked into the nearest village, a dusty, sun-washed place that had lived in the shadow of their war and somehow survived it. Children stared. Shopkeepers whispered. A few nodded to her, hesitant, like they weren't sure if she was human or something carved from stone. She bought bread, left double the payment, no words. And for the first time, she noticed how alive it all was. Chickens scratching in the dirt, a boy chasing a paper kite, a woman hanging laundry that smelled like soap instead of gun oil. The living were still here. She just wasn't sure if she was one of them yet. That night thunder rolled, the kind that rattled bones. She climbed the roof of the deserted barracks, lay flat on her back, and let the storm pass over her like some wild baptism. Rain pooled in her ears, mooting everything. Lightning turned her scars silver for a heartbeat at a time. And finally, she opened Raffi's letter. His handwriting was shaky, blurred in places as if written in haste or pain. He wrote about fear, how he'd hidden it behind jokes, how she'd made him believe in coming home, how if he didn't make it, he wanted her to know he didn't regret a single step, as long as one of them lived to remember. He ended with, "If you're reading this, you did, so live enough for both of us." The paper sagged in her soaked hands. She folded it back with care, pressing it flat against her chest until her heartbeat felt like his again for just a moment. By dawn, the storm had rinsed everything clean. She dressed in plain clothes for the first time in years. No rank, no patch, just skin and fabric. She stepped off the base road, boots sinking into the soft, forgiving mud. Each step felt strange, exposed, unarmored. But not weak. She wasn't leaving them behind. She was taking them forward. Every scar reminded her she lived, and every breath carried those who didn't. She glanced back once at the silhouette of the old hangar against the morning light, the place where ghosts still saluted her in silence. Then she kept walking. No fanfare, no flags. Just a steady, quiet stride toward a world that didn't know her name, and didn't need to. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.